for me? Every presidential administration has claimed it wants to cut the government bloat. Currently, Donald Trump's White House is talking about being more efficient and cutting government programs that are inefficient or spending too much. Biden's Department of Energy and others have made similar claims to this. But there's always one budget that is left untouched, one that is never on the chopping block: military spending. In fact, this year alone, Congress is likely to approve a bill that increases military spending by over $100 billion through the next 10 years. While education falls apart, hospitals shut down, and veterans sleep on the streets, the Pentagon budget grows in secret and in plain sight. This video is going to be about that unchecked empire, the one built not just on foreign soil, but on secrecy, greed, and fear here at home. There are historic parallels to military spending in doomed empires, and it's no different here in the United States as we march towards the end of the empire. The first one is the Roman Empire. Huge military overreach, inflation, tax burdens, and institutional decline that led to the end of the empire. There are other factors as well, but the military overreach was very inclusive in this decision. The Soviet Union had a military GDP of up to 17%. Black budgets like what we have here in the United States, which we'll talk about soon. The Afghanistan war fighting against the radical Islamists who were funded by the United States government and then led to the economic collapse that eventually led to the fall of the Soviet Union. We can also discuss the Ming Dynasty, who had the costly Great Wall and naval missions that were protecting from outside threats but ignored the internal decay, such as the rebellions, the famines, and other crises. Honorable mentions can be the British, Ottoman, and French empires, which all essentially had similar problems. Too much military spending, not enough focus on what was going on at home or the needs of the common people. These empires didn't fall overnight. They were bled dry, economically, morally, and socially, by endless wars and secrecy. This next section we're going to discuss the modern parallels within the United States empire, which is currently, as we speak, falling into decay. One is the growing budget that has not been audited in 10 years, the Pentagon and the military spending, which as of now is $886 billion, more than the next 10 countries combined. Corporations make billions, if not trillions of dollars off this every year. Lockheed, Raytheon, Boeing, all making money mostly off of funding regimes and selling weapons to places like Israel, who have terrible human rights violations. The mercenaries and the PMCs. We talk about the Blackwater and Niser Square massacre at one point, but also Eric Prince's Afghanistan privatization proposal, in which Eric Prince wanted to privatize and do a corporate-style colonial state of Afghanistan, which was denied by most government administrations, but seriously considered by the last few, including Obama and Trump. This next section, we're going to discuss black budgets. If you don't know what black budgets are, a black budget is a secret budget that is hidden every single year, upwards of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, covered in covert ops and surveillance being a main one, not only surveillance of overseas, but surveillance of people here in the United States. You can see Edward Snowden's NSA leaks if you want more information on that. I'm sure we'll discuss it at some point on this channel. Basically what that means, and you all know this to a certain extent, is you are being monitored and watched 24/7, 365. Every single minute of every single day, you are being listened to and watched. If you think your phone's turned off and nothing's there, it's not. It's still there listening to you all the time. The oversight of this is a joke. Congress never sees the details of these spendings. There is no line item transparency. There is no, as mentioned earlier, auditing of what all this spending goes to. There's pushback and punishment if there ever is any type of investigation. Senator Feinstein investigated into CIA black sites and the torture that was going on there, as well as where this money was going. And allegedly, I say allegedly because I have to, but more than likely the CIA hacked into Senate staffers' computers. They threatened Senator Feinstein, and then she essentially came out and said these people are unaccountable, and I am worried that they are acting on their own interests separate from any government or oversight. This is especially terrifying because I'm not one to talk about the CIA conspiracies. I discussed this during the JFK video I made a couple weeks back, but mostly the CIA historically has gotten their mission from the government administration. But the truth of the matter is there are certain things that are being oversaw by the administrations through the CIA that they have plausible deniability for, but especially the black sites and the torture. Like Guantanamo Bay is still torturing people right now. CIA black sites, the Obama administration, whenever the black sites were leaked and people feigned outrage and wanted them changed, instead of having black sites, we just changed the definition of what a black site is, and we're still torturing people without any actual due process whatsoever. We're just funding absolute animals and monsters and horrible human rights violations for information that isn't going to help us at all. I'm sure at some point I'm going to do a video on just Guantanamo Bay by itself, but the things that are going on in Guantanamo Bay, there are people who are being held there for decades, who've not been charged with a crime, who are not known to why they are there in the first place, and who are regularly being tortured by people who are trying to inflict psychological, physical punishment on them to get information that we don't even need. We have cameras and ears and eyes everywhere in the entire world. We know what's going on all the time, but we're just harming and just destroying these people for virtually no reason. And if our government can't hold them accountable, if senators can't hold them accountable, who can? The answer is us, the American people. Just like with everything else, we can work together and we can put an end to these horrors, these terrible things that are happening in the name of freedom or whatever else. What are the domestic consequences of all of this? When all this money is going towards war and corporate profiteering and all these terrible things that we've talked about? Well, there's budget trade-offs. The military versus healthcare, education, infrastructure, that kind of thing. The reason that healthcare is privatized is not only because it makes corporations and the pharmaceutical industry a ton of money, it's because the American government spends so much on the War Department that they don't really spend anything on healthcare or education or infrastructure. In fact, if you took just probably about 30% of the War Department's budget, you could cover healthcare and education for all Americans, no problem, without any slack, and with little over to give to infrastructure, to repairing the roads, to repairing buildings, to investing in businesses. We are the country, of course, that talks about how much we love our veterans. We don't give a shit about the American veteran. They're essentially discarded as soon as they're out of the service and out of war. They may get a little money here and there, but the VA is constantly being gutted. In fact, the Trump administration just fired a bunch of people from the VA. A third of them were veterans. Every year, 6,000 veterans commit suicide. 1 in 5 veterans is suffering from PTSD, and 33,000 veterans are homeless. When these programs happen, there's a lot of what is known as cash overflow, or they build too much equipment, create too much military technology that they don't need. This militarizes police through what is known as the 1033 program. We've all seen the pictures from the BLM movements, from the reaction to Michael Brown being murdered in St. Louis. We see police officers in full militarized gear with tanks, with Humvees, with militarized rifles and sniper rifles, and just totally ridiculous things that police officers do not need for a civilian population, but they go out like they're fighting a war. And we've talked about that a little bit on this channel, but they're fighting a war against the American people. And that's what's happening all over the country right now. So there's just a war on the American people, and this is a big part of it, is all this spending on the War Department whenever it's not going towards funding brutal regimes or invading countries that we have no business being in. We are here at home fighting the poor populations, fighting against leftist movements, fighting against any sort of ideas that may transform everything. And this leads into the social decay. Infrastructure crumbles while these war profiteers are getting blank checks to do whatever they want. There's no investment in businesses in the United States outside of the corporations that own everything. There's no investment in small businesses. There's no investment in education. There's no investment in making the roads safer in something like what the rest of the world has, which would be a high-tech rail system that goes throughout the entire country and connects smoothly so that you weren't spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on cars and gasoline that are not only bad for the environment but are bad for you too. Dwight Eisenhower was famously against this. He warned against all of this. This was where we were going to go, and this is where we are. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars, more than that at this point. In some instances, when you take in consideration the black budgets, it gets over trillions of dollars on things that aren't helping Americans whatsoever and are so secretive that most Americans don't even know they exist. It's now time. Let's go ahead and talk about who profits. It's, as we have talked about this whole time, this is what is commonly referred to as the military-industrial complex. War is a business, not a necessity. We just discussed Eisenhower's warning, but he was absolutely correct. Then we talk about the defense contractor profits. There's Lockheed Martin, who makes $46 billion alone every year selling weapons. Raytheon, Boeing, they lobby and policy every single year. They spent over $100 million in 2023's elections alone, trying to make sure that they get their way in Congress. A lot of congressmen and women own defense stocks. War is a bipartisan business. You can see that through the 2001 voting about if we were going to go to quote unquote war in Iraq, when Hillary Clinton and the rest of the Democrats went straight with it. The war hawk Hillary Clinton, if she would have been elected in 2016, we would have already invaded Iran. No doubt in my entire mind. And now we are seeing the failures of these policies in Ukraine, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Vietnam, in Libya, in Sudan, in Somalia, and so on and so forth. And I guarantee you this, mark my words, the second the Russia-Ukraine conflict has been settled, we are going to see the Trump administration finally get what it wants to do, and they're going to invade Iran. War isn't in any way a last resort for the American nation at all. It's a business plan. We'll talk about it eventually, but Dick Cheney made millions, if not billions, off of the Iraq-Afghanistan invasions. So now we have to talk about what can be done. Well, we as an American people have to unify, just like with everything else. And this comes to working together to reclaim the budget. People really want to sometimes argue with me about how me saying your vote doesn't matter right now, because it doesn't. Elections are just legalized bribery. And we see it through all the money that the military-industrial complex just rushes into congressional elections. So reclaiming the budget, what does that mean? It means demanding that spending gets cut from defense, quote-unquote defense, and put into healthcare. It gets cut from war and put into housing, into education, and into jobs for the American people. Demanding transparency, declassify these black budget programs. One of the reasons I've been able to talk about like how much money there is in the black budgets, but not actually giving you any specifics, it's all classified. I filed 2 FOIA requests in the last 6 months trying to find out more about this, and both of them came back saying, I just can't get this information, because you can't. Just like Senator Feinstein couldn't. You cannot get this information anywhere. It's my tax dollars, it's your tax dollars, but you can't get the information on what this money is being spent on. It's wild. There's bits and pieces out there with Edward Snowden and with Julian Assange, his WikiLeaks, but there's no actual transparency at all. We have to also break the influence, and this goes into just getting money out of politics. We've talked about this for forever, but we have to ban money in politics. We have to ban insider stock trading by the people in Congress, and we have to get rid of military contractors. At one point in Afghanistan, there were more American mercenaries than there were American troops. And it led to horrible civil rights violations, horrible war crimes, and we just let it happen. We need to build a peace economy. We should support labor, the veterans, and anti-war coalitions. We need to stand for peace. We have, in history of the United States, diplomacy has never once been the number one thing we wanted to do. The American way of diplomacy is saying, you do what we are going to do, and if you don't, we're going to bomb you. And if you do what we want to do, we're probably going to bomb you anyway. Which you can see throughout the most recent quote-unquote ceasefire with the Palestinians and Israel, where Israel just halfway through the second week of the ceasefire just stopped pertaining to all of the rules that had been agreed upon, and then implemented a blockade that is now causing children and people and women and men to all starve, and they're just suffering because there's no aid, there's no food, nothing can get through to them whatsoever. And while the IDF are just going through murdering people casually with American weapons and American jets and American bombs. We have to organize. We have to make a budget and a government and a society that reflects our values. The time has come. I said at the beginning of this video, but it's true. We're living in the last days of the American empire. It might not be 2 years from now. It might not be 5 years from now. But 10 years from now, it's going to be pretty clear that we're on the precipice of the end. It's over. And the only way to stop it, the only way to survive it, the only way to make things better for us is to start working together. I mentioned at the end, but Israel's genocide in Gaza has reached unimaginable terrors. The blockade has gone on for months now. Children are starving to death. Women are starving to death. Men are starving to death. The Israeli forces are killing women and children and men at rates far greater than what we've seen in a long, long time. They are trying to complete the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, pushing them out and then taking it over. The goal is to push Palestinians from Gaza into the Sinai, and that will lead to more disasters across the Middle East. We'll see what happens. I really hope it doesn't get that far, but I mean, what else can you even think at this point? If you want to support Palestinian rights, the United States Campaign for Palestinian Rights is my preferred place to support. It's the first link in the description of every single one of these videos, followed more than likely or not by a few sources that I use to make these videos that you can read yourself to get more information. I hope you learned something today. I hope you're feeling motivated. I hope you start talking to your friends and family about this, and I hope you start moving, because if we don't start moving, then we are destined for disaster. Thank you so much. This has been Anything But Casual.